Pues yo soy una estudiante de doctorado de estudios filológicos de la Universidad de Sevilla y mis estudios se centran en los estudios de género y de cultura popular. Entonces, muchas gracias por tenerme aquí hoy hablando sobre este tema que me interesa tanto. Bueno, a partir de ahora voy a hablar en inglés porque realicé este trabajo en inglés y creo que hay conceptos que son un poco difíciles de traducir, sobre todo porque en España aún es un tema incipiente que está llegando. Así que, bueno, si alguien tiene alguna duda por el idioma o lo que sea, pues que me lo ponga en el chat o que me lo hace llegar como podáis. So, my presentation is titled Discussing the Resurgence of Traditional Gender Roles on Social Media. And we could approach this topic in several different ways, but I decided to approach it from the term tradwife or the tradwife movement. So in case you are not familiar with the term, I will introduce it in a minute and briefly explain what it is. The term tradwife began to appear on social media in the last 6 years or so, but it became popular during the COVID pandemic, coinciding with a moment in time in which women and, well, everyone else were logically confined to the domestic and private spheres. So it is short for traditional wife, and it is becoming increasingly popular online. Many women are posting content using the hashtag tradwife on many platforms such as X, which used to be Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and so on. The thing about this content is that it can be mistaken for homemaking content, but tradwives are not regular homemakers. So first of all, because their content has ideological connotations. They do not just showcase their lives as mothers or wives, they actively portray their lifestyle as the only way women can achieve happiness, and they oppose feminism because they claim that it has made women abandon the domestic sphere and making them unhappy. So they also take into consideration only the traditional family model, which is cis-heterosexual, that is to say mother, father, and children, which again has ideological connotations, which are really related to the fact that they are all follow religious doctrines. But perhaps the most obvious example that their content is ideological is the way they glamorize the past, specifically the 50s. And this is noticeable through the way they look, but also through the way they talk, pose, and they verbalize it through their discourses. The last thing that I wanted to mention is that I refer to this as the tradwife movement because I believe that they have created a network. They are not isolated, enclosed women who depend economically on their husbands. On the contrary, they make money from social media, they sell products online, they support each other's discourses, and this is becoming kind of political in a sense. So I think that you might understand better what this is all about if I read how they describe it. And they say, going back to the difference between housewife, homemaker, tradwife, you can have a wife who stays home, adheres to traditional gender roles, but she might not believe in submitting to her husband. But Christian traditional wives do believe in this. And notice the emphasis on submission and on religion. They basically aspire to be what they call the Proverbs 31 woman. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically a reference to the New Testament. And it is a woman who is devoted to her husband, committed to homemaking, but who is also a businesswoman, an entrepreneur. So I believe that this actually describes really well what the tradwife movement is about. I think that it's easier to understand how their discourses are ideological through specific examples. So I wanted to show you 3 different subjects. I selected women from different countries because this is a transnational movement. So let's begin by talking about St. Williams. She's an American TikToker in her early 20s, and she has become the face of the movement for many. She's a fervent Christian, and just like all the other 2 subjects, they all have this in common. They are Orthodox Christians. And in the case of Ekaterina Anderson, she's a Russian Instagrammer. What is striking about her case is the fact that she's educated in gender studies and she used to be a feminist, but now she rejects that lifestyle and describes herself as a trad wife, which is really interesting because unfortunately her husband was abusive towards her, but still she claims to support this discourse about submitting to her husband and so on. And then we have Alena Kate Petit, who is a British influencer famous for her blog, The Darling Academy, in which she declared herself to be a trad wife. But she had recently taken a step back and detached herself from the movement because she believes that it's becoming way too political, too radicalized, and related to the far right. So I really wanted to include her testimony as well because she was a pioneer of the movement and her contributions were really important. So that being said, now let's focus on the idealization of the past that I mentioned earlier. I wanted to include these pictures because they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So look at them, the way they pose, the way they kind of allude to this image of the happy housewife that was capitalized on during the 50s in order to promote the purchase of household goods. And I believe that this image is stuck in our collective memory. Next to them, you have a vintage magazine cover from 1950, and the resemblance is more than obvious. This is, at the end of the day, an image which is a product of globalization and capitalism. But the reality of women during the 50s was far from being what Tradwives described it to be. So I decided to include Betty Friedan's testimony to prove that the feminine mystique, as she calls it in her book, really harmed the physical and mental state of women. And she says, in America, from the time when women assumed their feminine sexual role as housewives, they no longer live with the zest, the enjoyment, the sense of purpose that is characteristic of true human health. So what trad wives are bringing back is not the actual past, it is this feminine mystique, and it conveys what Friedan calls the problem that has no name, but that we now know what she referred to. So continuing with this topic about happiness, this time I want to focus on their words rather than the way they look, because the word happy is recurrent in their discourses, and they seem to be obsessed with it. So let's begin by reading William's opinions on happiness in relation to her marriage. And she says, I take my husband's preferences into consideration, typically wear the clothes he likes best, style my hair the way he enjoys, and cook the foods he loves. I put my husband's wants ahead of my own, and this has done nothing but benefit myself and our marriage. And up to some point, I believe that everyone's happiness depends on their surroundings, right? And many scholars have talked about this, such as Judith Butler when she talks about the being happily queer versus being a happy queer and so on. But I'm specifically interested in Sarah Ahmed's views on this topic because I believe that she talks about it in a very straightforward way that we can apply to this. And she says, the good woman is good in part because of what she judges to be good, and hence how she aligns her happiness with the happiness of others. And this is exactly what trad wives do. Their happiness is called conditional happiness because it depends entirely on their husbands. And now I have talked about happiness. Now I want to talk about unhappiness. Because they all seem to agree that what makes women unhappy is feminism. So take a look at this quote from one of Anderson's posts. And she says, now when my 1-year-old allows me, I write on why I am happy to have escaped feminism. In the same way, Petit also writes, why are women so angry all the time? Something that really caught my attention is that she detaches herself from the term women as if she did not feel included by this general universal experience. So when I came across this hostility towards feminism for its connection to unhappiness, I couldn't help but think of the feminist killjoy. These women who get asked why they are all so angry all the time, why they see oppression everywhere. And of course, feminists do not look happy all the time, because that would mean being complacent, and that would mean not pointing out sexist comments and behaviors. So I wanted to sum this up with this question, which seems like a riddle, but actually makes a lot of sense to me, and I hope it makes sense to you too. And it goes, can women become happy by making those who make them unhappy happy? Because I believe that is the false promise of happiness that these stratwives are selling. But their hate towards feminism does not stop there, and it becomes even more ideological and perhaps theoretical. These three women blame feminism for denying biological determinism. Williams' discourse is not based on anthropological or scientific evidence. It is basically based on her religious values. As she says, embrace your femininity. God designed two genders for different purposes. And it is the same for Petit, who says, in a modern world that wants to coerce us into gender neutrality, she, the tradwife, knows this goes against the laws of nature. Although this is still an ongoing conversation, we are now aware of the role that socialization plays when it comes to forging our gender identity. So these two women could just be oblivious to this, but that is definitely not the case for Katarina Andersen. As I said, she was educated in gender studies, so she's familiar with queer theory and how it affects feminism and their relationship. And yet she claims to be trans-exclusive, essentialist, and anti-feminist, because she identifies the current queer inclusive type of feminism as the only type of feminism, and she says that it basically blurs the meaning of the word woman. So she rejects the whole movement. And she says feminism is very uncomfortable with the reality of sexual differences. To begin with, her discourse is quite vague, because are we here talking about hormones? Are we talking about genitals? There is a whole spectrum of realities that defy what she understands as the reality of sexual differences in a binary classification. So I wanted to quote Judith Butler, who says that the category of sex is from the start normative. It is what Foucault has called a regulatory ideal. Butler troubles the Western understanding of the binaries female, woman, male, man, attributing it to culture. But their work has usually been misunderstood by many people, including scholars. So many people tend to think what Andersen believes, that is, that the current standard definition of woman, a woman is whoever identifies herself as a woman, is a testimony of what last 50 years have done to womanhood. That is not quite true, as that is not what queer theory actually means. It doesn't mean that you can just wear a dress and decide that you want to be a woman today just because, out of the blue. This is a matter of gender performance and of repetition throughout time. So Andersen's statement just seems simplistic at best and sensationalist at worst. And on top of that, there is no need to complicate it this much to prove it wrong, because contrary to her generalizations, feminist theory as a whole does not straightforwardly reject the classification male, female, man, woman. And indeed, this conversation is still up for debate in many fields, including sports, medicine, in which many feminists point out what they understand as biological differences. And there are many ways to approach this, aiming at equality without antagonizing the feminist movement as a whole, just like tradwives do. So their discourse just seems reductionist. And I want to end my presentation by reading this quote. I think that they are clearly anti-feminist. I would say that it is obvious that their reasoning to become homemakers is way different from the reasoning behind our mothers and grandmothers and so on. So I'm going to read this quote, which says, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." And by idealizing the past, these women are in control of a narrative that delegates women to the domestic sphere again, selling promises of happiness, and by making their viewers believe that feminism is to blame for women's unhappiness, they are dangerously leading us to a future in which women will have forgotten all that we have achieved thanks to feminism. So this type of content on social media reaches many, many people without needing to have any theoretical or historical background, as we have seen. They can just literally lie to their viewers and show the frame that they want to show. So this is the whole point of the presentation, I think, to please tell you to be aware of how easy it is to spread misinformation on social media when it comes to the role of women, and do not fall for these sensationalist anti-feminist discourses. I'm sure that you won't. That is all I had to say. Thank you so much for listening to me. Bueno, lo digo en español para que se me entienda. Muchas gracias por escucharme. Si alguien tiene alguna pregunta de algún concepto que no haya quedado claro en inglés o lo que sea, quiere aportar algo, algo que hayan visto en redes sociales, pues genial.
Perfecto, muchas gracias.